Welcome to another episode of DraftKings Picks here on the Jamie Hinks Fantasy Football channel. I'm your host, Jamie Hinks, of course. So on this show, I'm going to be going through my 8-man lineup for this Tuesday's big set of games on DraftKings, where there's some huge contests, so make sure you go check it out. I'll also be going through my lineup from last weekend in the FA Cup, which was an interesting slate, and I'll be going through which players scored me the most points, which players I should have had in my team, and where I'll be going better next time. So with no further ado, let's get straight into my lineup for this Tuesday's games. So considering there's 7 games on this slate, there's so much choice at every single position. Goalkeepers, exactly the same. I've decided to go for Tom Heaton of Burnley, 4,900. I'm jumping on that massive Burnley bandwagon at home yet again. I think he's very, very cheap at this price. He's got the best saves per game ratio in the whole of the Premier League, 4.6 saves per game. He keeps Burnley in a lot of games. He's one of the main reasons that they have been winning so well at home. And they're playing against Leicester City. They may be champions, but they've been absolutely terrible on the road this season. They've I think they've only kept 1 clean sheet away from home. They haven't won a game. So I'm backing Burnley to win this, and I'm backing Heaton to have a big day. So if you've been watching my videos recently, you'll know how much I love the Spurs fullbacks, and it's no surprise that I've gone for both of them again. I did it on Saturday in the FA Cup, and it did me okay. This time I've gone for Danny Rose, $5,400 on DraftKings. He's 10.8 fantasy points per game, which is a great figure for a defender. You won't find many players outside of maybe James Milner getting up that high. But the reason Rose is so good is because he gets forward so well. Him and Walker are two of the most are the best attacking fullbacks in the Premier League, in my opinion. Rose also 2.9 tackles per game, which is actually the 8th best total in the whole of the Premier League. Was injured on Saturday, but I think he will definitely recover for this game. And he's 63 crosses is also in the top 10 in the Premier League. So you're getting points all round, and it is only Sunderland who look like they've almost given up on staying in the league. So alongside him in my defence, I've gone for Kyle Walker, 5,200. No defender has more assists than Kyle Walker so far this season in the Premier League. Not even James Milner. Sunderland's defence is awful. And yet again, this is a guy that just loves to cross the ball. You'll see those fullbacks, they play as auxiliary wingers, and I think they're going to do very, very well against Sunderland. So to complete that 3-man stack of Spurs players, I've gone for Dele Alli. Only 8,200 on DraftKings this midweek. 11.3 fantasy points per game. I'm going for him ahead of Eriksen because Eriksen is that little bit too much more than him, and it wouldn't have allowed me to fit in the other players further up the team, who you'll see later on. But Ali has actually got 9 goals in his last 9 games for Spurs in all competitions, and he's in a great little run of form. I wouldn't not pick him just because you want to pick Eriksen. Maybe even take both of them if you can afford to leave one of the big guns out from your forward line. But I think Ali, greater goal threat than Eriksen as well. Over 1k cheaper. And Sunderland are going to be breached many times this midweek. So alongside him in midfield, I've gone for someone who'll be playing up front, and he's midfield / forward on DraftKings. It's Loic Remy of Crystal Palace, my team of course, 4,500. I'll be watching him down at the Vitality Stadium this Tuesday night, and I think it's time for him to score his first goal for Palace. Bournemouth's defence really hasn't been that good recently. They've been shipping goals at the back, and Eddie Howe doesn't seem to be able to stop that. Zaha being back in the team, it's the first time they're ever going to have started a game together in the Premier League, and I think that's a key thing to think of when picking your lineups. Remy's slotted in very well alongside Benteke, and Wilfried Zaha will be back in the team to start this game because he is Crystal Palace's best player. I think Remy will benefit from that. So costing just 4,500 allows you to save some money for Alexis Sanchez, of course. He's my first forward. He's $11,000 on DraftKings. He's getting into that territory of Messi and Ronaldo where he costs more than everyone else by a country mile, and that is the case this midweek. There's no City players on this slate, no United players on this slate, and Dimitri Payet, who wouldn't have been on this slate anyway, but he's now gone to Marseille, of course. Alexis Sanchez has actually contributed towards 22 goals for his team so far this season, which is the best total of any player in the Premier League. 15 goals as joint top scorer with Diego Costa, but we'll give Sanchez the edge because he's actually got 7 assists as well. So he's chipping in for goals for his teammates as well, especially someone like Olivier Giroud. Sanchez, 3.6 shots per game, is in the top 10. They're playing against Watford. Arsenal. Watford really haven't been good recently. Went down to Millwall of League One on Sunday, of course, in the FA Cup. Well done to any of you who picked Steve Morris, and I know he was on my radar. And also 2 assists as a sub in that FA Cup game against Southampton for Sanchez. And I think Sanchez will be in the points again this midweek. Even pick him if you've got a fantasy Premier League team as your captain, because I really think Arsenal are going to have a field day against Watford. So alongside him up front, I've gone for Andre Gray of Burnley. 5,600 looks incredibly cheap to me for a Burnley team that are playing Leicester, who aren't on good form. Another team that slipped up in the FA Cup at the weekend. Leicester had to come from behind to equalise against Derby late on and really didn't look like they were at the races. The fact that they're conceding goals at this rate of knots away from home really worries me, and Andre Gray's the kind of player that will capitalise on that, I think. Leicester only one clean sheet away from home, which I told you earlier on. 5 of Andre Gray's 6 goals in the Premier League this season have been at home, and that is key for me because I think this Burnley home form is something to really jump on in your lineups. Plus, I don't think that many people are going to... I think he'll be fairly highly owned, Andre Gray, but he's not going to be like a huge... He's not going to have a huge percentage like someone like Sanchez, so I think he could create you a bit of a differential in that sense. So, in the util spot, I've saved... I don't think the best till last, I hope not anyway, but Ryan Fraser, 4,900 of AFC Bournemouth, playing Palace this midweek. He's had over 10 points in 3 of his last 4 games, and I was really impressed with Fraser when I saw him against Palace back right at the start of the season. He plays a little bit like a little barrel almost. He's just seems to rumble around, very tricky for defenders, and he's got 2 goals in his last 4 games for Bournemouth. Also, I just think Palace can't defend. There you go, I've said it. And they've kept 1 clean sheet all season. I don't think the arrival of Patrick Van Aanholt is going to improve things like right away. I still think Palace could win this, but Bournemouth pick Ryan Fraser or even pick Junior Stanislas if you've got a bit more than $4,900 left, and I think you'll be laughing. So there you can see my team there. So we're starting off in goals. Tom Heaton, only 4,900. Get him in your lineup. Then the Rose, Walker, Ali stack from Spurs, which I think will get you plenty of points if you pick all 3 of them. Loic Remy of Crystal Palace, Alexis Sanchez of Arsenal, Andre Gray of Burnley, and finishing it off with Ryan Fraser of Bournemouth. So in this next segment of the show, I'm going to be looking at my FA Cup lineup from the last weekend. If you watched my video on Friday, thanks a lot to everyone that did. You'll have seen my lineup. And it actually ended up getting 132 points on DraftKings, as you can see there. The player that came up huge for me was Son Heung-Min, and I knew he would. He was the one I was saying back then was the one I was hoping that would score plenty of points, and he really did. 2 goals in that game against Wickham, including that late winner for Spurs, got him 37.25 points. And you compare that to someone who I left out of my lineup, which was Theo Walcott. Only actually got 38.25 points, scoring a hat-trick. Son's 37.25 points just look incredibly valuable if you take it in that sense. He had 9 shots. He was doing the job of what Harry Kane usually does very well. And the other players that did very, very well for my team were Pedro, who got 24 points, Michy Batshuayi, 23 points. I think in any cup tie at the moment with Chelsea, where they're playing against inferior opposition, you pick these players because they're so drilled by Antonio Conte that they just turn it on every single time they play. Also, someone like Batshuayi, always going to have a point to prove in the cup, and it doesn't look like he's going to play Diego Costa ahead of him, so I'd definitely pick Batshuayi. Pedro, Willian did very well also. So the disappointments in my team, the most disappointed I was with a player was Moussa Sissoko, who got only 8.5 fantasy points for Spurs, and that was in a 4-3 win. You really would expect him to get at least an assist in that game. He was cheap, so I mean you're approaching value there if you think you want to get double. You want to look at the salary and you want to get double where points are concerned. He was below 5,000, so 8.5 points, almost value. But for me, very disappointing. Another one who was equally as disappointing for the same team was Ben Davis. I haven't learnt my lesson. I've stacked up the Spurs fullbacks again this midweek with my lineup that I went through earlier. But Ben Davis, 4.25 fantasy points, very, very poor in my book. And a special mention for my boy Glenn Murray, ex-Palace, now at Brighton. I wasn't unhappy at all to see Brighton lose to Lincoln. I was very surprised, but I guess they made it first on to match of the day, so good on them there. But Glenn Murray, he did get an assist, but only around 9.25 points, and 7,600 was really expensive for Glenn Murray. It's a bit of a nostalgic pick for me, but I mean 132 points, I don't think that's a bad score. The highest score in the sweeper contest of the day, I think, was 182 points, or 186. And the winning lineup in that one had Welbeck, who got 33 points on his return, and Theo Walcott, of course, and that's where it really differed from my team. So, guys, that's it today for my DraftKings picks video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see plenty more content throughout the week. I will be at the Crystal Palace game down at Bournemouth this midweek, so my Twitter updates will be slightly less than they were just at the last weekend, but I'll try my best to get some tips out there when the lineups are up. Hit me up on Twitter if you have any more questions or want any more extra tips. And I will be going through my lineup from this Tuesday in Friday's show. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye and good luck.